This is the press preview. A first look at the newspapers as they reach us here at Sky Centre. We'll talk through those in the next half hour with the Evening Standard columnist Ayesha Hazarika and the Sun's political editor Tom Newton-Dunn. Good to see you both.
Hello.
Hello.
Before we have a chat, let's just run you through the front pages, should we? We'll start with the Metro. Leads with a piece which blames a breakdown in society for attacks on police. In the Telegraph, Jeremy Corbyn's criticism of British Zionists was the most offensive statement made by a senior politician since Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech, according to the former Chief Rabbi, Lord Sachs. The FT reports the pensions regulator has urged 14 company retirement schemes to consider cutting cash offers made to members. The Guardian has comments from Theresa May, who suggested she would fight any leadership challenge from the former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson. The Express also has the Prime Minister's trip to Africa as she strikes an upbeat tone with negotiations, saying the UK is closing in on a deal. Doctors are welcoming a game-changing development that could predict heart attacks years in advance. That's in the eye for you. Pro-EU Conservative MPs fear UKIP supporters are trying to join the party in an attempt to unseat them. That's in the Times. And the Star has a story about Gordon Ramsay. Don't know what that's about, but we'll maybe find out a little bit later. Let's talk through those then with Ayesha and with Tom. Kick off with the front of the Telegraph, should we? And Lord Sachs.
Yeah, so this is a very explosive interview with Lord Jonathan Sachs. He used to be he's the former chief rabbi, and he has equated Corbyn's comments. He was recorded saying some very unpleasant things about British Zionists, which have caused huge offence. And he said these comments were so offensive to him it was reminiscent of Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech. And the one thing that is absolutely clear is this horrible, nasty row about anti-Semitism is not going away. I've just this week been speaking to very, very senior people in the Labour Party, people who are very much supportive of Jeremy Corbyn, and even they are tearing their hair out about this latest video which was leaked, and it has caused untold hurt to the Jewish community. The Labour Party has always been very proud of its close association with the Jewish community. And so many people I know have decided that this is enough. They have ripped up their membership cards. The Jewish community are very, very hurt, upset. Many of them are very frightened. And this is just an awful situation. And I don't know how the Labour Party gets itself out of this.
But I mean, the Labour Party has said repeatedly on this issue, as a whole, but also on this 2013 speech, that this is effectively, they're saying this is taken out of context. Jeremy Corbyn was not using British Zionists as a sort of slang term for talking about British Jews. He was talking about a specific group of pro-Israel people that he was targeting.
That is not how the Jewish community feel. And if you swapped that word for a black person or Muslim person, then people would be rightly tearing their hair out about it. You know, I spoke to one of my very, very good Jewish friends who has been so supportive of Corbyn and all of this, and actually up until that point has been saying, you know what, maybe everyone is going a bit over the top about it, you know, maybe this is a bit of an attack on Corbyn. Even he was saying, I am clinging onto the Labour Party by my fingertips. I'm this close to giving up my membership.
So it's worth breaking down a little bit exactly what we're talking about here. And the remarks that were reported last week was Corbyn a few years ago saying British Zionists, in other words, people in Britain who believe in the existence and will argue for the existence of a Jewish homeland, a Jewish state, don't get irony. Now, if you believe Zionism is the one and the same as being Jewish and therefore being anti-Zionism is the one and the same as being anti-Semitic, you will take extreme offence of that because you'll equate Jeremy Corbyn effectively saying Jewish people don't get irony, Jewish people haven't got a sense of humour, and that really is going into the sort of ghettoisation of a race, which is exactly what Lord Sachs is calling out here. Lord Sachs is taking the most offence he can on this, really, and quite arguably he's got very good reason to do that. Now, this is where it gets, we cast forward maybe onto next week, where the Labour NEC, the ruling body, will meet, and we're learning now, another thing that came out today, will almost certainly accept the full definition of anti-Semitism as laid out by the IHRA, which is any criticism of Zionism is also in itself anti-Semitic. But And here's the killer part. Corbyn is already arguing, though I'll accept this full definition of anti-Semitism, which is the thing that's caused these huge ruptures the entire summer. All the things Labour wanted to do all summer long, their Made in Britain campaign, you remember that one?
No.
Well, I do, because I got the press releases every day. We didn't report them because we're all too busy reporting anti-Semitism. So their entire summer has gone, has been wasted because of this row. Now, Corbyn next week, though he's now going to climb down and accept this full definition, is also going to insist on a caveat for free speech. You can say whatever you want as long as it's free speech, including, guess what, criticising Zionism. And the reason is, deep down in his very core, he has never been happy with the existence of the State of Israel to be uncriticised as a self-fulfilling prophecy. And to his core, a massive supporter of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian state, wants to be able to continue arguing against that.
OK, we'll hopefully get a chance to talk about that a little bit later on. But can we move on to the front of The Guardian and look at Theresa May in South Africa? And, I mean, she's made some significant progress, so it would seem.
In her dancing style, or not in Brexit? Surely you're talking. I'm talking
Yes.
about Brexit. I'm so
So
sorry.
we are talking. Yeah, I don't want to talk about the dancing just yet.
Just yet, we'll save that till a bit later.
Yeah.
We should mention very briefly the picture on front page of The Guardian, which is Theresa May dancing in South Africa today with some school kids, and you've been showing the video footage all day long. It is something quite special. But since we've got a still paper review to get on with, the story is Theresa vowing to serve on as Prime Minister and to defeat any challenge that happens to come her way. So if she goes on a trip, she gets asked by people like me, standing on an aeroplane with her, because she always has to come back and talk to us as part of the deal that we follow around the world at vast expense, and we get a little bit of time with her. She's always asked, are you going to stay on as Prime Minister, Mrs May, past X, Y or Z? And the current row is Boris Johnson's imminent leadership challenge. It's between 1 month to a year away, depending on which Tory you talk to. I spoke to one senior Tory MP today who's convinced he's going to try and launch something next month. Others saying it's going to be sort of post-Brexit. Anyway, Boris is going to make some sort of challenge. So Theresa May says, yes, I'm going to fight on. And really...
But what else could she say?
That's it. Now, whether she actually does is the killer question. But you're absolutely right. She has to say, I'm in this for the long term, I think was the remark she kept on repeating.
Yeah.
But nobody believes that. You know, it sounds so hollow. It sounds like a sort of strong and stable mantra, which got kind of weaker and wobblier as the election went on. I think her fatal mistake with all of this Brexit stuff and her leadership is, look, calling that snap election was a terrible miscalculation for her, and it went very, very badly. And she's had nothing but insubordination, particularly from Boris Johnson.
But was calling it wrong? I mean, the campaign was clearly wrong, but at the time where she called it, I mean, the polls said she was going to get a huge majority.
It was a mistake. When you lose your majority and you imperil your government and you paralyse your government because of your loss of your majority, you have to call that out as a mistake. What she should have done, I think, is when she did that famed conference speech last year, when everything went wrong, the letters were falling off the wall, she was coughing, you know, someone handed her a P45. Boris Johnson, even at that conference, was being disloyal, and he is the sort of thorn in her side, goading her. She should have stamped her authority on things, and I think what she should have said is, look, I'm going to be the Prime Minister that delivers Brexit. That's why this is my job in life. I'm going to do the right thing by the country, not just the party. I will go after that is done. But while I'm around, I'm in charge of Brexit, and I would have, if I were her, I would have sacked Boris Johnson then and there, because nobody buys the idea that she is going to be around after Brexit is done.
She's been advised to do that. Very senior people were saying to her, listen, PM, you're not going to make it through even this year unless you put a time limit on your own ambitions. Now, she has actually made it through. So I take a slightly more charitable view, although not hugely more than Ayesha, which is, I think the Tory party at the moment is now entered the realms of unleadable. There is not one single person who can possibly unite the extreme different wings on Brexit, on actually, you know, on tax, on a huge gamut of different things. And she thinks that because she's a great, you know, devotion to public service, and this is her duty, she generally believes, that she has to stay on and try and hold this together. David Cameron used to say in private, but I think he's long gone now, so we can disclose these things in public, that being leader of the Conservative Party was like carrying a Ming vase from one side of the room to the other. And every Tory leader is desperate not to drop that vase halfway through flight. And that's what she's trying to do.
Well, as we try not to drop the vase, we'll take a little break, should we? We can rebalance ourselves. When we come back, we'll tell you why Donald Trump didn't like what he found when he Googled himself. Never do it. That is the press preview. Talking to the papers with Ayesha and Tom. Well, I'll tell you what they were saying in the break. There is a golden rule you must always follow, ladies and gentlemen, which is never Google yourself. Donald Trump has fallen flat on his face by doing that. He's not very happy.
He's not very happy. So the Donald got on the old Google and it found out that there's quite a lot of unpleasant stories about himself on Google, and he was absolutely horrified. And then the next thing you know, a statement comes out saying this is a very serious situation and it will be addressed. And so one of his advisors, the president's chief economic advisor, has said that the administration is now going to be having a look at whether Google search results should be regulated by the government. I mean, this is absolutely absurd. This is somebody who's had a late night, they've Googled themselves, something unpleasant's come up, and now he's decided he's got to crack down on freedom of speech. This is ridiculous.
What do you reckon, Tom?
Not so. I will stand, and I haven't said anything particularly nice about Donald Trump in my short political career so far, but I think he's got a point here. I really do. Now, let me detach the means to this first, because he sent out this tweet at 5:24 a.m. Washington time, and people remarked on what on earth was he doing Googling himself at 5:24 a.m. But the man lives strange hours, that has to be said. He has, without doubt, an extreme obsession in himself and what people say about him. That is basically his entire presidency. There isn't much else to it. But on this, he has a very good point. I'll tell you why.
You don't like Google and you don't like tech.
No, hang on. Don't steal my punchlines. I'll tell you why. It is absolutely true. It's a true thing to say. If you stick something into Google, you will not get up the most interesting search results or the most searched on search results. The entire thing is a money-making business. That's a fact. You can pay Google to set up an algorithm to find your news first, right? So we accept the premise that Google is basically a fixed mechanism that will come up, not as what's most interesting or what most people want to read first, but something that has been fixed. Now, in the news business also, which Google is into, bad news pays. Good news doesn't pay. No one wants to hear about all the good things that have happened in the world. It is far more interesting and, quite frankly, scary and profitable. And I know, because I'm in this business, to tell people about the more worrying things. Yeah. So Google, without a doubt, will want people, because they want people to come back to Google and use it. They want people to see the bad news first.
But you don't want it regulated by the government.
Well, this is the same.
There I would definitely part company with Donald Trump.
This is like press freedom. This is like basically, he's not coming at it from the view that, hey, let's do the right thing by tech and search. He's read something where his ego has been pricked and he wants to use his office.
You and I both think that, but there's absolutely no proof of that. But just to turn the argument on its head, listen, the man's a monster,
hang on,
right?
This is like
but he's got a point.
Not taking a question from CNN because he doesn't like CNN.
It's not quite that.
It is.
It's slightly different.
This goes to freedom of speech and freedom of expression and the freedom of the press.
Let me turn the argument on its head. Would you like to know more about how Google runs its algorithms?
Oh, I've got my massive problems with Google. Don't get me wrong, I've got huge problems with Google. But if I felt that this was coming from a place of good intent and integrity, I'd be all for it. It's not.
Can a bad man have a good point?
Not him, because he never does.
I don't know.
Slam dunk. The prosecution rests, Your Honour.
Yeah, OK. Look, on that note, the Donald has eaten up all of our time. But I know, but it's an interesting discussion. It's a good one to talk through. Thank you both. See you a little bit later on.
Thank you.
Let's have a look at the weather for you.